All
right. So yesterday we did adding and subtracting where you had to have the same index and the same radicand in order to combine anything. And if you didn't, you had to go and simplify to see if you could fix it to make you be able to combine it. I personally think multiplying is a little bit easier. So the only thing you need to have in order to multiply is the same index. So you need to have square root and square root, or 6 root and 6 root. Okay, you cannot multiply anything that has a different index. So that's the first thing you want to check. Are my indexes here and the two that I'm trying to multiply the same? Yes. Okay, remember, if there's not a number written there, it is an unwritten 2. Enough. Okay. If there is nothing written there, there is an unwritten 2. Okay, so once you check, we can put here that the index is 2. Okay, so both of your indexes are 2. We've checked that. We move on to the next step. Step 2 says to multiply the coefficients. So the coefficients are the big numbers in front of your radicals. So your coefficient to the first one is a -4. The coefficient to your second one is a -1. So your second step, we multiply -4 times -1. What does that give me?
4. Positive 4.
Gives me a +4. Negative times a negative gives me a positive.
Oh, that's where I be getting mixed up at, because I think it like added. Wait, what's adding the negative and the negative?
Negative and a negative is a negative when you add, yes. Whoever's music is playing, it needs to be shut off now. Shut it off. Oh, shut it off.
It's okay.
Okay. Step 3 is to multiply the radicands. Those are the numbers underneath of your root. So for this one, we're going to multiply 15 and 3. What does that give me? 45. Okay. Your last step then is to simplify your answer. So watch what I do. You have a 4 as a coefficient, and you have the square root, and underneath we have 45. Okay, this came from step 2. This came from step 3. Now we need to simplify. What does 45 break down? What goes into 45 that is prime? 5. What are you left with? 9. What goes into 9?
3.
And?
3. 1.
And 3. And 1. Okay, we're dealing with square roots. So what am I grouping in?
2.
I'm grouping in 2s. So I have a group of 3s. Okay, so that means this 3 comes out front with my 4. I already have a 4 written there. I need to bring the 3 out that I've circled. What's left underneath my square root then? The 5. And then finally, what's 4 times 3? 12 square roots of 5.
Is that easy?
I told you, I think multiplying is easier than adding and subtracting.
Do we have to divide?
We're going to divide on Monday.
Is that easy or hard?
Oh, that's the answer for what? That's just the answer right there.
Are you better now
Yeah.
that I moved it up? He's trying to say he can't see over your head, Marlon.
Oh, my fault.
Okay, this clues in on page 81, ladies and gents.
Bro, so I just gave you my last clue for no reason, bro. We're responsible, bro.
Actually, I don't have this. Let's get buckle. Why the question?
Because I gave you the food. Because I gave you the food. So that's the one I made. What?
This one right there.
What?
To your left.
It is. We look off the button there. Look, it ain't.
No, they didn't make. And it's down to what now?
Hey,
Okay.
let me get it, please.
We've got 6 more problems that we're gonna do. It's another one of those little booklets.
Yay.
Okay, it's another one of those little booklets. Yeah, we can fold it first.
I use your blue. You don't have blue. Oh, I use your blue.
We do the same thing.
CJ.
Okay.
That's the way I like it. I like it.
I didn't.
Yep, time to go shopping.
There goes the glue stick.
Oh, you sent him over there yesterday with these?
Yep, little book, just like we did yesterday. Bless you.
And it's empty anyway. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm doing it right now. But I'm gonna do it outside.
I hate voting.
That's the way I like it.
Hate voting.
You do? Who?
No, I apologize, Laura.
That's not.
Nah, bro.
Why?
No,
Why?
no, bro.
Wait, how you fold again? You like fold it that way?
Okay.
That way.
Hot dog flies first, and then fold it in half, hamburger, open it back up, and fold it in half hamburger style.
No, oh, it's
And then fold it one more time that way too.
Oh, that's so.
I got
I owe
got a lot of
this
energy.
bread. Look at this ice. Look at the way I bought.
And then he said you gotta cut it from right here, right?
Christian, what your mom said about the shoes?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. I told her that you don't have a PayPal, so she gonna wait till Friday. Wait, today is Friday.
So you gonna give them today?
I gotta find the savings.
So your mom said yes.
He's lying.
I'm not lying.
Arrest him.
Arrest him.
If anybody needs help folding their booklets, please let me know.
Low key, I ain't got a foot.
Oh my God, no euro.
Damn mind.
Yeah, I can just fold it completely wrong.
No. Then you said cut up these creases.
I messed up.
Good boy. Hey,
Ah.
what?
Oh.
Hey, what? I
What you better not miss, bro.
met the other day.
Trash.
And then you cut it.
Trash. Come on, folks. I was rushing yesterday too.
Come to the
Mark,
wall.
this doesn't open.
Come to the wall.
Wow.
Come to the wall, Elijah.
I don't know.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Christian, go to the wall.
Okay, I knew I was.
Why is my tape up and over here? It needs to go back to my desk. That's fine, but use it over there. It's for everybody in the class. You can't keep it over
This one
there.
better.
Hot dog style.
You kick out all the No.
Are you ready for the?
Yeah. You gotta ask me.
Yes.
Ooh.
I think
What you doing? Yeah. Thank you.
You got to do something?
That's my group. Say thank you.
I did it.
Yeah, you all hard.
I just cut it right here.
Anybody else need help?
You don't need to even use the glue yet.
Look at my sister.
It's going 80.
Oh no, it's over that. Way over that.
Boy, what made you come in?
I was gonna come Monday. To start.
Tina, what page should we just do that one on?
I was supposed to,
81?
but that.
I just wanted to make sure I was telling him right before. He
First,
put
he
it in
said
and
I
then
was
he owes
16,
me.
I just got away with super. I was like, no, I need to stay.
Right.
Right. I was like, I ain't 16. So it's like, oh.
What you mean?
No, that's why I came here. So I can get some time with my father. So she can't say I'm bigger than you. So I just
Where
came
was
today.
it?
And I'm like,
That's not.
I'm gonna cut off my day.
No, don't do that. You might as well stay the rest of the day because your dad gonna go to dinner if you don't.
Again?
So he gonna ball down.
Dude,
Dude, he not getting no ball.
Like I said, I will be back Monday.
No.
Yes, but they can't. The people from court wasn't even down there yet. So I don't even have like this last.
No, that's, yeah, that's 81. Yeah.
But you would have numbers at the top of your page. just
I
like
already got
you're
numbers
supposed
at the
to,
top of my page.
What they go right here?
Then you would know
That's
that's
how you do
81.
this, I need that.
I would wait until we.
Do it first before you glue it in. That way you can manipulate it as you need it. All right.
He will. You know he will.
If everybody will open up their little book that we just made. We're going to do the first problem on the inside. Okay, your steps are the same as we just did on that first page. So, step number 1 is to multiply my coefficients. What is my coefficient of my first radical? A 3. What is my coefficient of my second radical? A 1. If there's nothing written there, there's an unwritten 1. So what's 3 times 1? 3. Okay, then I've got a square root symbol. Remember, I can only multiply if my roots are the same. So I've got square root and square root, so we're good. Step number 3 said, multiply the numbers underneath of your radicals. So 12 times 6 gives me 72. If you need to see the steps written here, this is 3 times 1, and this was 12 times 6. Okay, that way you can see the steps that we just took. Okay, your last step then is to simplify. So let's break down 72. 72 is divisible by 2, and you're left with 36. 36 is now divisible by what, Stefan?
What?
36. What goes into 36?
3.
I need a prime number.
Oh.
2.
2. Or you could have done 3. Okay? Does not matter. So, 2, if I divide by 2, I'm left with 18.
Oh.
Okay. So Marlon said another 2, and we're left with 9.
Three.
Caleb says 3, and we're left with 3 and 3 and 1. I swear that was Caleb.
It was me.
Sorry, Christian.
Oh,
I swear it came from back this way, not that way. My bad, Christian. Okay. What am I grouping in this time?
2.
2s. My index is a 2. So I've got one group of 2s and one group of 3s. Okay. Please don't forget, this 3 that's out front has to drop first. So we've got 3 from there. We have a group of 2s, so we have another 2. And we have a group of 3s, so we have another 3. Then you've got your square root. What stays underneath your square root this time?
2.
A 2. That's the only thing I haven't circled.
Yeah.
So we have a 2.
Yeah.
Your final step then is to multiply what is here. What's 3 times 2 times 3? 18. So your final answer is 18 square roots of 2.
This is easy.
I told you multiplying is easier. Multiplying is easier in radicals than adding and subtracting.
And dividing.
Dividing becomes difficult when we have to rationalize the denominator.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
like a lot of
I ain't coming Monday.
Can we skip that part?
I'm not gonna be here Monday.
We'll be in
I'm
Milwaukee.
not coming Monday.
Okay,
I go to Charlotte.
We're going to Alabama.
this time, what are my coefficients?
What else?
1 and 1. So, do I really even need to multiply those together? No, because it's going to be an unwritten 1.
Miss Smith,
Yes, ma'am.
you have Charles Clark.
Sure. Yes.
Can you send him to the office, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
What you mean? ISS, boy, you.
Okay.
Now.
So, because both of your coefficients are 1 and multiplying something by 1 doesn't change it, we can kind of bypass that now. So now we've got the square root. We have to multiply what's underneath the square root. So let's start with your numbers. What's 20 times 20? 400. What's x squared times x? X to the third. Remember, when you multiply your x's, you take your exponents and add them together. So you've got x to the second, so this is a 2. And if you have x, that's x to the first.
What's X cubed?
And 2 plus 1 is x cubed. Okay. All right. My last step then is to simplify. So we need to break down 400. Oh, man.
Oh man, oh man.
You can do 2.
200.
And I'm left with 200. I can do what next then, Edwin?
100.
Hold on. Edwin. Give me a number that divides into 200 that's prime. What'd you say? 2. Good. So 2, and I'm left with 100.
Yeah.
Okay. Joseph, what's 100 divisible by? Prime number. 2. Okay. So we're left with 50.
Now.
Josue, what's 50 divisible by?
I'll play 2.
Stop. Is your name Josue? No. Think small prime numbers, Josue. 2. So 2, and we're left with 25. Ashanti, what divides into 25, my friend? 5. Anything that ends in a 0 and a 5, you can automatically think 5. We're left with what? 5 and 5 and 1.
It's Gucci.
It's Gucci.
Yeah, that's a big cake.
That
This
is
is
a
a big old
big
cake.
cake.
What's a cake, bro?
That's like a 50th anniversary tiered cake.
Yeah.
That's what we'll go with. Okay. So, what am I grouping in this time?
Two.
Twos. Okay. Two.
We got two.
Two sets of twos.
2 sets of 5.
And one set of 5. Okay, so I grouped a 2. How many times did I group them? Twice. So 2 to the second power times. I grouped a 5. How many times? Once. Okay, we're not finished yet. Don't forget, we have variables here. Remember, if I have x to the third, that is 3 x's. Okay, x to the third means we have 3 x's. Again, we're grouping in 2s. So, I have one set of x's.
So x to the 1.
Whoa.
It died.
Yeah.
Okay. So, it pulls out an x. What's left underneath the square root then?
I don't know.
What's that circle?
Well, hold on.
Wait, I
Do I have, hold up. Do we have any numbers not circled?
No.
No.
So it's x.
Just the x down here that we didn't circle. So that goes here.
Okay.
Okay, don't forget this time we have variables. Oh, this is going to get on my nerves.
What's going on?
The light keeps going out. I don't know why.
Oh,
It's
God.
time for
Tell Casper to stop playing.
Okay,
Bro, let my brother
so
know.
now my last step is to multiply what's out front. So first we have to do exponents. What's 2 to the second power?
4.
4 times 5 is
20.
20. So this is 20x square roots of x.
Can we get back and pull it down a little bit?
Absolutely.
A little
Absolutely.
bit more. I want to see what we got. What do you notice
What? I'm not supposed to notice.
with the answer and the original?
It's the same. Oh, my Lanza.
Illuminati.
Because what did you do?
You just simplify. What you divide? You can divide it.
Think
Bruh,
about it.
It says 20 and it got 2 eggs to it.
Hold
Bro.
Think about it. If you take 20 times 20, that's the same thing as 20 squared, right? What is the opposite of squaring something?
Square root.
Square root. So when you square root it, once you multiply them together, which you squared it, and then you square rooted it, it brought your 20 back out. 400 is a perfect square.
Oh my.
Okay, so if you would have had the square root of 49, what times what gives you 49? 7 times 7. So the square root of 49 is a 7. Anything that is a perfect square. So 1, 4, 9 is 3 times 3. 16 is 4 times 4. 25 is 5 times 5. Okay, 36, 49, 64, 81,
81.
100, 121,
Look at y'all.
144.
Burn up in your head.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, after that comes 169, and then the one above that is 196. You switch your numbers.
Then and it
And then,
25.
huh?
Then it's 25.
225. I don't know anything about that. I know them, but I don't know them all that well. Okay. All right. Open up your little book, and we're here now.
Oh my God. Man.
Okay? Again, step 1, multiply your coefficients.
You don't have to multiply.
Why?
Because it's 1.
It's 1 times 1, which doesn't change anything. So we can kind of bypass that. So now we need to multiply what's underneath. What's 15 times 10? 150.
150.
Remember, anytime you take a number times 10, it's that number with a 0 stuck on the end of it. N squared times n to the third becomes n to the 5th power. Good. You add 2 and 3 together. Okay. So now let's simplify. We break down 150. We can do 5. The first thought I always have anytime my number ends in a 0 and a 5 is 5. Okay. Even numbers are 2. If you can add them up, it's a 3. What do we get when we divide by 5?
That's 30.
30. It also ends in a 0. So what can I divide by?
5.
You could do 5 again. You could do 3. It doesn't matter. If I pull out 5, what am I left with? 6. 6 is 2 and 3
is 3
and 3
is 1
and 1. Okay.
Yes.
So let's deal with our numbers first. I'm grouping in 2s. So what can I circle?
5.
I can circle my 5s. I only have 1, 2, and 1, 3, so I can't do anything with those. Please do not forget, you've got n to the 5th power. So you've got 5 n's to deal with too. 5 n's. So how many groups of n's am I going to have? 2 of them. 1 and 2.
1 and 2. 1 and 2.
Okay, so everything that's circled comes out front. I have 5 to the what power? How many groups did I circle?
2.
Just 1, so it's 5 to the 1 power, which is just 5. I also did n's. To the 2nd power, I've got 2 groups. Okay, back underneath the square root. You have 2 and 3 here. What's 2 times 3? 6. And I have an n down here, so an n.
Let's go. We're a bunch of
What about the next?
Caleb says, oh crap, what about okay. Please do not get intimidated by this. This is not as bad as you think. Okay, so whenever you have something outside of a set of parentheses, you must multiply and distribute to each piece. So we're going to take the square root of 3 times 5 first. Okay. Okay. Remember, when you multiply the numbers outside of the radical first. So what's outside of square root of 3? 1. Is 5 inside a radical?
Yes.
No. So we assume that that's a coefficient. 5 is a coefficient. So this is technically 1 times 5, which is what? 5. There is no square root here. So this is just 5 square roots of 3. Anytime you multiply a radical against a number, you take that number against the number in front of your radical and put them together. That's it. Okay, so if I had something like, let's say we had, hold on. If I had 7 square roots of 3, and in here I had 2 plus the square root of 2. Okay, when you distribute, this is a coefficient. So this and this go together, and this becomes 14 square roots of 3.
Plus 2.
So, okay.
Okay, so even if I had, give me a number, Christian.
8.
8. Square roots of 6. And I multiply this against a 3. 8 times 3 is 24 square roots of 6.
Gotcha.
There is no radical here to deal with. So you take your number and multiply by the coefficient in front of your radical and keep your radical.
So, okay.
Does that make sense?
I'm just like, So what if there was a radical?
We have a month, 9 days.
So if this was like square root of 2,
Mhm.
8 times 3 is 24. Square roots of 6 times 2, which is 12.
Oh,
And then you would simplify this and move on. Okay. So now we took the square root of 3 times 5. We also need to take the square root of 3 times this square root of 3. So what are my coefficients in front of the square root of 3? Just a 1. So we leave that alone. Okay, now we've got the square root. Multiply what's underneath of it. What's 3 times 3? 9.
Jesus.
And again, your last step is to simplify now. The square root of 3.
3.
Does that break down at all?
No.
No. So 5 square roots of 3 is not going to change. Plus, what's the square root of 9?
3.
And you're done.
Easy, bro.
3 doesn't have a radical with it, so you cannot add them together. They have to stay separate. So your final answer is 5 square roots of 3 plus 3. But what in the square root? No. Because if you actually break it down, you break down 9, so you get 3 and 3. You break down 3 and you get 3 and 1. So when you group, there's nothing left over, so you have nothing to put back underneath the radical. Okay. All right. Okay. We need to distribute again. So I take this times the 2. Okay, is the 2 underneath the square root?
No.
No. So your 2 gets multiplied against what? The negative 3. So what's 2 times negative 3? Negative 6. You have nothing to multiply your square root against, so it's square roots of 3. Plus, we have negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3. And then you've got the square root of 3 times 6, which is 18. Okay. Does this simplify? Does this simplify?
Yes.
Yes. So let's break down 18. 18 breaks down into 3 and 6. 6 breaks down into 3 and 2. And 2 and 1. You could have pulled out the 3 or you could have pulled out the 2, Marlon. Either way works.
There you go, circle your one set of 3.
I'm going to circle my one set of 3s.
Yes.
Okay, so now I already have a negative 3 written here. I need to pull out another 3 from what I circled. Square roots. What stays underneath the square root? 2. Okay, so you said we couldn't do anything with this, so it just drops down. Negative 6 square roots of 3. You said I couldn't do anything. It was already simplified. This one, once I simplified it, we have to multiply what's out front. What's negative 3 times 3? Negative 9. Square roots of 2. Can I combine those? Can I subtract them? No. One is the square root of 3. One is the square root of 2. That is your final answer.
It's over. Got one more, guys.
Okay.
We're done.
One more and we're finished.
With notes. Yes. Didn't work.
You're going to do a group flag activity.
Bro.
No. Just one.
Not that bad. Okay. This one. again, I need to take this square root of 3 and multiply it by everything. So we do the first one first. What are my coefficients I'm going to multiply? What's my coefficient here? 1. What's here? -5. So what's 1 times -5? -5. Square roots.
10 times 3.
10 times 3, which is 30.
30, amigo.
Plus coefficient times coefficient. 1. Not going to write it. Keep your square root. 3 times 6 is 18. Yeah, don't forget the 3 that's over there. Okay. Is 30 going to simplify? Yes. Okay. This is the part where it becomes long again, but you will not see very many of these. Okay. So 30 breaks down into 2 and 15.
That's 3.
That's 3 and 5. And that's 5 and 1. Is there anything that I can circle and pull out?
Nope.
No. So is this one going to change?
Nope.
Nope.
It's gonna stay the same.
So-
That's one of the ones that are.
Uh-huh. Because you do all that extra work and then you're like, crap, I can't do anything with it. So that one's not going to change.
God.
The other one is 18. Let's break it down. Remember, prime first.
3.
So 3 and 6. 3 and 2. 2 and 1. What can I circle this time? I have a group of 3s. So we pull the 3 out front. And what's left underneath? 2.
I bet you that's it.
Can I add these two together?
No.
No, I've got square root of 30 and square root of 2. They're not the same.
We're not the same.
You don't know it.
We don't talk anymore.
We don't talk.
Any questions? Okay, this is going to be your lonely little book on page 82. Your lonely little book's going to go on page
82.
82.
Long, we're talking to page 81. Yeah, 81 is a big page.
That's the only one that's getting
Jesus.
Yeah.
No. I'm just wanting.
Oh. Oh.
You like I said no.
No.
I'm sick.